Welcome, everyone, to So Very Wrong About Games, a board gaming podcast about board games. I'm here with Don from the Secret Cabal, and we are going to have a great show today. How are you today, Don?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. Before we get to going, we have some amendums or some talk about last week's episode. Last week, I had the Hungry Gamer on. And I want to be clear, this is no fault of his. It was my choice to review Lunar Rush. It is our policies that we have on our show. There's no reason that he has to, partake of our policies, but it was revealed later on in the episode that he's the brother of the designer of Lunar Rush. And so I was just going to do a disclosure at the beginning, like add that. But then the next day, it turned out that he was also the media manager of the Kickstarter that just went up for Innovations, the expansion for Lunar Rush. So at that point, I thought it was a little bit too much. And so I've edited the episodes and removed that final review and reposted them, because it's just against our editorial policies, because we feel that all disclosure is very necessary. We don't sell or give out our review copies. We don't take any money from publishers. We do no sponsored content. And I think that's all I'd like to talk about on the matter. Let's get on with it. We're going to have a normal episode today. We are going to talk about the games we played this week. We're going to talk about some news and why it doesn't matter. And then we're going to do our main review, which is a very short, quick, light game called Sweetlands. Don, what did you get to play this week?
Well, I got to play yet again a game that I have loved playing for the last 2 or 3 months that I've had it. It's hit the table many, many times, and that's Soothsayers, designed by Jeff Grisenthwaite and published by Play to Z. This is a game where you have a tableau of cards, and for those that listen to our podcast, you know that I love tableau builders, and you have 4 actions that you can take. There's a lead and follow mechanism. So the actions you'll take is either earn, draft, ascend, or capture, and that's basically a way for you to go up from the rank 1 card in these 4 suits up to the rank 6 card over time. The earn gets you money. The draft gets you more cards into your hand. The ascend lets you move up, as I said, from 1s to 2s to 3s to 4s to 5s to 6s in each of these suits. And capture is the most intriguing action because it lets you capture larger tarot cards that they're out on the middle of the table that you can grab, and sort of they affect or adjust or augment the action that you're taking, whether it's earn, draft, ascend, or capture. So when you get these tarot cards, you put them under the corresponding suit, and whenever you do that action or follow that action, in some cases, it will augment what you do. So for instance, if you earn money, you will earn more money. If you draft, you may draft more cards. It may let you do an alternative action when you lead other than the main action, or it might preclude others from following your action when you do it. A couple things I really like about this game is it's very dynamic, very quick, plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. And of course, the more familiar you are with it, the faster it plays. I also love the artwork on the cards. It has this nice tarot, of course, not surprising, tarot kind of imagery that's used on all the cards in the game. And I like the lead and follow mechanism because I like that no matter whose turn it is, you have a choice. You have something to do. And often with games like Race for the Galaxy or San Juan, you're trying to build up your tableau to also augment your follow turns so that you're leeching off of the abilities of others. It goes until you have a certain number of fate tokens, depending on the number of players in the game. And those fate tokens are gathered by having the highest card in one of those 4 suits, or having the highest number tarot card under one of those suits, or sometimes you can get them via other mechanisms that the cards introduce into the game. And I love the fact that it's not just a race. These fate tokens are moving around the board. So when I think of tableau builders that are very interactive and very dynamic, this just shot to the top of the list. And I've really enjoyed this game. I am taking it with me just about everywhere I go and trying to get a game played. So one thing I do like, I should say I like about it, one aspect, it's one of those games that I love, but I'm absolutely terrible at it. Like I've won one time, and that was the biggest fluke, but I keep bringing that game back to the table because it's just so fun to play. Really glad I found this one a couple months ago.
Yeah, I looked it up, and it has like very medieval art, like the art style would be like what would come out. And man, did it lead me down a rabbit hole, because there was an older game called Ordnance Rigny, and for the life of me, I could not remember the name of that game because it's the same style art. It's also a 2-player sort of battler. You're putting out troops and has the same type of art. Yeah, it looks amazing. Giant tarot-sized cards with this medieval old-style art. It looked like I'm going to have to take a look at it and see if I can find a copy.
Yeah, it's very well balanced, too. I like the fact that there are many different strategies you can take, and some of those strategies depend on the tarot cards that are available to you. So it's not like you just have a strategy you can come to over and over and over again and try to sort of, lather, rinse, and repeat that strategy. Rather, you have to adjust to what the strategies of others are. The tarot cards on the board change the texture of what the different players can do in a huge way. And so you really have to be very versatile in what you can do and watch the other players. It's just one of those games where not only are you involved in every turn, you're really paying attention to other players' tableau. And it's just one of those things. Everyone is 100% invested, and it's moving quick, and it's a ton of fun.
Speaking of multiple strategies, I got to play a game called Orléans. I'm sure no one's ever heard about it. And even though you can fall back on the same strategies, because it's the same basic sort of how you get victory points concept, you need to move up the star track and you need to put out taverns, because it's going to be taverns times how far you get up the star track. But how you get up how you accomplish these two things can be so different based on the plethora of buildings and workers that you populate your bag with. Orléans is a bag builder. And so you're drawing out these workers, you're performing different actions, you're moving around France, putting up these homes in different areas. And like I said, victory points are going to come at the end. It has the very interesting sort of event system where you see the event at the beginning of the round, and then you have the whole round to sort of work towards not taking the torture penalty. And you need to work up this book track to get the stars I was talking about. But to do that, you have to take a scholar. And every time you take a scholar, you go up the track. But now you're bloating your bag with all these scholars. So either you need to build buildings that require these scholars, or build buildings that get you up that book track without actually, having to take that action. And figuring that out is the fun I find in Orléans. And playing it on Board Game Arena makes it that much more fun, because if you're playing it async, you get to sort of sit and you get to look at all the buildings for a change. So instead of me having to teach it and make sure people are taking their turns and all the questions, I actually get to look at the plethora of buildings due to like the 19 different expansions that are out, and see all the different ways that I can get the buildings around Orléans faster, or get buildings out, because you don't have to build them in the different locations. There's this road building that I got this time that just lets me populate it with like 5 buildings. They just go on the card instead of having to move around the map, like the 2-step process of moving my main meeple around the map and then building the guild hall and then moving again somewhere else. This meant a little bit of torture for me, Don. Because if you're not moving around the map, all of the routes between the cities give you resources. A lot of the events say you need to pay resources. So if you're not moving around the map, you're not getting resources. And therefore, you're going to have to pay the torture. Torture is bad. And so there's all different things, like pull a building off, pay $5. So there's a lot of money coming out on my end. And also, the players I had to play against are not very nice people. You see, there's this farmer track, and whoever's at the end of the farmer track has to also pay money. So they were depleting my money, and I had to pay a bunch of money on torture, but it didn't matter to me. I had this interesting strategy of zooming up the book track due to how many houses I had out, and then switched over to just getting straight money and money's just straight at the end of the game. Money is straight victory points. So getting money for all of the buildings I had out, which was all of them. So all of these different buildings do different things. If you've never played Orléans, definitely give it a try. Even though I did very much enjoy the game we just played, there is a cooperative version of Orléans that I just like that much better. Check it out. It is designed by Reiner Stockhausen and put out by DIP Games, and I love it.
So I also got a chance to play Xenology. This is one that's gone under the radar. This is designed by Dan Manfredini, published by Play to Z. And I just love the theme associated with this game. It is I guess you would say a worker placement game, but not quite. You're kind of moving around spaces on the ship with your workers to do things. These workers will occasionally move off the ship onto smaller ships so that they can beam down, or fly down, I should say, to the world, whatever this world is, and get resources, research things and to fill up artifacts and to bring them back. So the idea is there's a little bit of a cycle that's not quite clear from the rule book when you first start playing, but you go and talk to elders. And what does that mean? That means you play some cards from your hand and say you're going to research certain type of things. And the elders sort of concur with this, and you get in your spaceships and you go down to the planet. All this, again, is accomplished via that worker placement mechanism. Once you're down at the planet, you will move around, explore new tiles, and extract things from those tiles. And again, that stuff is that aforementioned type of things that you're researching. So maybe you need a certain terrain type, or it has to come from a certain region of the world, of which there are 3, the polar region, the tropical region, and the dry region. or maybe it fill in the blank, right? You got to do a certain thing to get certain stuff. One of the intriguing things about this is you have a collection of supply cubes, and these supply cubes basically are how much focus you have to do these tasks. So whenever you extract things, not only do you need the cubes to put on your research cards that you've agreed to research, but you also have to have some cubes to leave behind that are the evidence of your presence on that world. And that evidence, if you don't clean it up at some point, will be negative points for you at the end of the game. So there's this supply cube economy that you have to invest into in the turns that you're taking this game, as well as the fact that it's just cool thematically when you're just like, okay, I've left evidence down there, right? This little alien footprints, or I've left fingerprints somewhere or something, and there's actions associated with cleaning that up. Once you get those research cubes on your board and you come back, you can go and log things into the database. There's a nice little sort of spatial puzzle up on the top left of the main game board where you're logging that data into the database, and you get points for all the data you've logged in. You get points for spatially how those cubes are situated next to each other during the game. And the way the game ends is someone actually takes their last supply cube from the supply out in the middle. So there's a nice race going on here. It doesn't sort of outstay its welcome. It's kind of interesting in terms of the worker placement and the actions they do. And the big thing is it's very thematic. If I have a knock on the game, it's that it's not a very pretty game. The production qualities leave a little bit to be desired, but man, there is a good game underneath that. I do wonder if it's going to have long-term staying capacity, because you know once you've played this, you've sort of seen a lot of the cards and how that game's played, and they're not events or anything like that. I think it may be a game that's ripe for an expansion or two to add some asymmetric powers or events into the game and things like that. It also has a solo mode, very similar, as you said, to Orléans, but I haven't played it yet, so I can't comment on that. But I want to. It looks like a simple solo player mode, as opposed to some of the ones I've seen where it's like there's a simple 77-step chart when you flip over a card to do a thing in the solo mode. But there's a lot to like here, especially if you like that theme of aliens visiting a planet and extracting data and leaving evidence behind.
That's what I was wondering, does everyone have their own sort of planet, or is everyone going to the same planet, or is it sort of not really talked about?
It is absolutely the same planet. And in fact, that's part of the game, is racing to get on certain spots, and you can't have multiple pieces on a spot. So if there's an alien already there, you can't go to that spot. If there's evidence there, you can't go to that spot, which is another reason for cleaning things up. It also gives bonuses for cleaning up other people's evidence. So it's not like you're working completely against one another. There is some leeching and sort of semi-co-op kind of aspects to this game. But yes, there's that race there, not only for the data, but for the spaces on the planet as well.
There needs to be an expansion. I've already figured out asymmetric powers. One side plays alien hunters, and they use that evidence that other players leave behind, and they need to track down the aliens. So they're playing a totally different game, doing other things while the aliens are dropping down. It's going to be great. Can't wait.
Yeah.
They're going to hear this, and they're going to make that expansion. It's going to be fantastic.
So that's Xenology by Play to Z Games.
I got an oldie but a goodie out. And the story is I said I really want to play XenoShyft. I might have to play, and I might have to play a solo game this week because everyone was busy. I want to play XenoShyft. And then I couldn't find it at first. I was a little worried that I'd given it away. But then, underneath this larger game, it's been a while since I felt this sort of euphoria rush of joy, of thank God I still have this Grail game that I love so much. XenoShyft is a deck building game that these aliens stream into the base. You first get this card that makes you part of a division. You could be, part of the psychic division, or part of the grafting division where, your troops get alien parts grafted onto their bodies, or you could be either armory or weapons. And that's going to give you a bonus to what cards your deck starts with and what cards are going to be in the market. So there's tons of really cool weapons and armor and crazy stuff in the market that anyone can be. Even though I'm, the grafting division, doesn't mean other players can't use those. It just means I have an advantage. They're a little bit cheaper for me, and I start with some. So anyone can have these fairly unique, cool abilities, and you sort of set up your line and you put out your troops. And it's just, you flip up the two cards in the middle, like your troop versus an alien. They attack each other, then whoever dies, and they, everything closes in one after the other, and you just try to hope that you have enough defense and weapons and the right sort of combination, because there's like reveal effects and special abilities and all sorts of crazy things that happen. You just hope you have enough that you can defeat against it, because anything extra is going to damage your base, and that's the end gamer, right? Base will start with 30 hit points or something. If it ever goes to 0, you lose. And so it's pretty fantastic. It is one of my favorite games, and there is a little bit of player interaction. It's not all just solo. While you're everyone's planning their boards for the attack. You're allowed to play Marines. Like if someone didn't draw very well and didn't get enough money, you can play cards from your hand into their line at this point. And there are a few cards that actually let you do stuff during their turn, which is very interesting. The wording is very specific. It'll say in your lane. And if it doesn't say specifically in your lane, it means you can do it anywhere. So it's like neat, interactions that way. You do 2 normal rounds and then you shuffle a boss into the alien cards that are coming out this turn. So this giant boss will hit someone random. You don't know who's going to get it. You have to make it through 3 full, waves, 9 rounds, and then you win. That doesn't happen, but, it's in the rule book that's how you win. XenoShyft is designed by Keren Philosophales and Michael Shinall, put out by Cool Mini or Not.
So I used to have a copy of this years ago. I'm looking at the artwork as well. I was disappointed on Board Game Geek. It doesn't say who the artist is because I really like the artwork. And it looks like the kind of game that would sort of pull you into it via that artwork. I wish they had credited that.
Yeah, I'm a huge Aliens fan. So that just, bites on that. And there's there's 3 full different factions now that you can have attacking your base. So it's, you can mix it up that way and the fact that the 3 waves I was talking about, they all have their different decks as well. So there's something totally different will come out and you'll have no idea. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it looks good. So I got a chance to play what is now a classic game. I mean, it's been around over a quarter of a century, and that is Puerto Rico 1897 Special Edition. Of course, it's been rethemed to the 1897 time frame, appropriately so, because of some of the issues associated with colonization and slavery in the original Puerto Rico. This is more about sort of the worker class sort of building up, and you can employ those workers to do a variety of things. This has that thing I talked about with Soothsayers earlier, which at the center of what you're doing is the lead and follow mechanism. And it's basically a very elegant scope down game that's just all about leading and following to produce goods, to ship goods, to sell goods, and use that money to buy buildings that increase your capabilities when it comes to doing all those things. On your turn, you take one of the 7-ish rolls and you will do whatever. If it's planning to get more goods, or maybe it's captaining to ship things out, or maybe it's craftsman to produce goods, right? All these different things, recruiting to get more workers, so on and so forth. You do a thing, everyone else around the table does a thing. This is a game that, even though it's had 3 or 4 instantiations in different editions over the last quarter century or so, the game itself has not changed. There have been some minor expansions, but it's one of those weird things. We think about games that have existed, the better part of 3 decades. Usually they've been updated over time when new editions have come out. And Puerto Rico 1897 has not. One of the big things about this is, Awaken Realms has now published this game. It's from designer Andreas Seyfarth, one of the only handful of games that he did. His name's been out of the news for a while. But Awaken Realms, of course, they're known for their production values. And when I got this game, I just love the fact they're taking some of these classic games. They do the same thing with Castles of Burgundy, where they take a classic game and they give it the updated sort of, kingly version of all the
overly
components.
updated sometimes.
Yes, that's true. So the reason I'm happy to talk about it on the show today is because I don't know if I can ever get Jamey to play it. He's another co-host on the Secret Cabal podcast. Because when we covered this, he's like, yeah, I don't think I need all this bling in my version of Puerto Rico. So I think out of principle, he might not play it, but I'm sure going to try to play it with him. I love the fact that it's just so straightforward in what it's trying to do, but there's so much depth when it comes to strategy. If there's a downside, it's that there's very little randomness at the beginning of the game. And if you do play with people that have played many, many times, there is like a scripted 9-roll sequence of how this game is supposed to start.
It's very much a Axis and Allies thing. If you don't attack here by turn 3, then all the rest of the table looks at you like you don't know what you're doing. Like, why did we invite this person? They've ruined our game. It's much like playing bridge. How's that?
Yes, there's a good comparison. But luckily, none of the players that I've played with are these Puerto Rico aficionados. So one of my favorite quotes is from a buddy, Alan Ernstine, who I've gamed with years ago. And he's a designer all his own. You should look up his games. He's great. But anyway, he said, I love playing Puerto Rico with people that never play Puerto Rico. And he said that because he didn't play it very often. But the thing is, it's a lot of fun when you get people together and you just sort of explore it and just try some things and see what works and what doesn't work. I mean, that 9-step sequence is really only a problem for people that have played it a lot. And if they're at the table, people who have not played it at all. But again, that's small niche. Yeah, I found that the bling factor of these new components makes it so that the components themselves matches the elegance and beauty of the gameplay. And those things have been married up. I'm a big fan of Awaken Realms doing this with a variety of games. And this is yet another winner in that regard.
Well, how does it affect playability, though? Is it like another thing? Like I was looking at what they did with, did they do the Castles of Burgundy one
Yes.
as well?
Yeah.
And so I was looking at that, and I'm not sure if this is a thing, but it just seems as though it's like, okay, I'm building this building. It's okay, let's stop. And we have to look through this giant case of all the different buildings, and you finally find the one that you need. And so did you find that in Puerto Rico? Was it like did it take more time because you needed to find these fancy components to get them out on the board?
So that's a great question, Walker. And it's you bore right into what I was wanting to talk about here. And that is, yes, that can be burdensome. Luckily, very much like Castles of Burgundy, you have acrylic versions of the cardboard components. So you almost have like an in-between game you can play that's much easier and doesn't have any more burden associated with it than the original. That's the version we played. But yes, I've got a whole other box that's got the actual buildings. And what you would do is put the buildings on the board, you put the buildings on the board and the tiles to the side. But again, it has that exact problem if you go the full blinged out version, which is, okay, let's pause the game for a second while I dig in this box and I find the building corresponding to the one you just bought. We'll put it on your board, and that does slow it down. In addition, it does take one or two players' time away from the game because they have to be the ones digging into the box. And very much like when I played Castles of Burgundy, that blinged out edition, it just takes some time. I felt like 50% of the time I'm playing the game, 50% of the time I'm digging in the box. So I don't play that full blinged out version of either Castles of Burgundy or Puerto Rico Special Edition. As I said, that in-between state where everything is still really nice, but not quite as blinged out as that other version. That's probably the version to play to keep the game moving along as it's supposed to.
Yeah, I had the problem with Frostpunk. There's this Frostpunk game that was based off of a computer game. And when you purchased a building, you'd put the tile out at first, right? And it would have all the actual information on the tile. So you could just stop there. But of course, if you have the version with the actual, plastic miniatures, you'd have to go over to the box now and go through this plethora of buildings. It's like, is it that one? No, it has more of an L shape. No, it has 2 floors. And it's like, I paid for these buildings. We're going to get the right one. And so you're like looking and you look at the little, chart. It's like, okay, it could be this one. And you take it, and you put it on top of the token that was already there. Man, like much of these games, once you get everything out there, man, does it look good, right?
At the end of the game, you look at it, it looks like a cityscape. It looks great.
Exactly.
But you probably could have spent the same amount of time building an actual cityscape.
Yeah, it's probably true.
So anyway, that's Puerto Rico 1897. If you've never played Puerto Rico, this is a great version to try. Any version is a great version to try. If you've played Puerto Rico and you want to go back and sort of, play this uber nice version, then this special edition from Awaken Realms is the way to go. Again, I just love this game, and I think you will probably like it too if you like those elegant Euros. It's over a quarter century old and stands the test of time. That's Puerto Rico 1897.
It's true. Before we had this huge board game explosion, Puerto Rico was the game that was on top of the BGG for years.
Yes.
And it wasn't until like in the last few that it finally started to drop down. I have a review copy of a game called Flip Pick Towers. This is designed by Rob Fisher and Adam Porter. This is a review copy they sent me. It's very much a draw and write. So you have this nice little sheet where you're going to start drawing these towers, and they're going to get taller and taller. And in between these towers, you're going to put beanstalks and bridges and banners. And every time you add a piece of the tower, it's got to be higher because all the towers are numbered. So you'll flip up, say a reveal, it'll say Tower 7, Tower 1, and a bridge. And everyone just sort of announces which card they want. Everyone can pick the same one. It doesn't matter. And so you pick the one you want, you draw it on your board. There are some rules to where they can go, but it's very much a spatial management game, right? It's like, well, I put a beanstalk there. That means no banners can go there or bridges or I've picked, and now my tower values are so low that it's going to be very hard for me to get more towers higher. You go through the deck. Once you've gone through the deck one time, you score everything. It will be your highest tower, your beanstalks, your banners, windows you're going to get as well. Because every time you pick a card, there'll be a resource on the bottom. You add that resource. That's what gives you windows and banners and gold. Gold's key. There are 2 dragons in the deck. If a dragon comes and you don't have gold to give to it, it's going to take the top spot of one of your towers. And now if that is blocked, it can go no higher. There are also a bunch of royalty cards. There is a queen, a princess, and a king. And the cool part about that is that they have a giant deck of special abilities. And you only pick 3 and you line them up each with their little card for those 3 characters. And every time one of those cards up, if you choose it, you look at the special ability, and it would be the queen has to be on different rows, or the king needs to be parallel with banners to get points, all sorts of different things. I enjoyed it. I was under a little bit of time constraint when I played it, so I'm worried that it will affect my decision, but it just seemed longer than it should be. Like I said, you do 2 rounds and you need to go through this whole deck twice. And the deck is, I think it was like, we worked it out. It was like 63 or something. You'd go through 21 rounds or something of
Wow.
these cards. It just seems so long. There are ways that it will end early because you could get trapped where you can't use any of the cards. So you have like these 3 little sort of things that you get to fill in at the top. And if someone fills all of those in, then it's done type thing. But I am looking forward to playing it again. I like the fact there's so many special abilities. There are also, I didn't talk about any of the creatures that could come up. I only talked about the dragons. There's like witches and imps and other things that give you all sorts of other special abilities. It's a little bit like, I don't know if you ever played cartographers with someone that enjoys drawing, and you look over at their sheet and they've done such a wonderful job of drawing in monsters and all of the stuff. It is very much that type of game. If you enjoy drawing, you can make wonderful little bridges and banners and dragons and kings and queens. If you're up for drawing, this is definitely the game you want to try out.
So I have a question. When it comes to the king, the queen, and the princess, you said there's a deck of cards you pull from that give them their special powers or special scoring portions for the game. How big are those decks associated with those 3?
Well, that's right. It's very large. I meant to look it up, but it's at least 20 different cards.
Okay.
And it could be that one game, the king has the ability, the next game, the queen will have it, right? They have 3 thick cardboard cards for the 3 characters, and then you just shuffle that large deck of special abilities and put one in front of each for each game. Pretty neat. I liked it. And that is Flip Pick Towers.
So I got a chance to revisit a game that is, I guess, a classic at this point. It's been out for going on 7 years, and it seems like it's been longer than that. This is from Stonemaier Games, designed by Jamey Stegmaier, and this is Tapestry. Now, this particular version I played of it incorporated the Arts and Architecture expansion, and we played with just about everything. We did have 2 new players at the table, so we left the starting buildings out, but other than that, because we wanted to really jump into it, we sort of put everything in there. And the thing I like about Tapestry and its expansions is nothing is overly burdensome associated with playing this. I know that when it came out, it was sold as a civilization type game, and we're really torn on thinking, is this a civilization game or not? Because it has very Euro-y kind of elements to it. But again, there's area control, there's exploration, all the 4X aspects are sort of there, and the civilization aspects are there. So what this really means is this game sort of is in a category all its own. It doesn't play quite like anything else. And the way you take a turn in this game is you will move up one of the 4 tracks. These tracks are surrounding the board, and they're either the military track or the exploration track. I think there's the science track and industry track or something like that. What the Arts and Architecture expansion adds is a 5th track.
Another track.
Track. That's right.
Do tell. Please go on.
So my first question was, does this make it so that it sort of blunts some of the other strategies which allow you, which you try to get to the top of tracks? Because again, if you're taking the same number of turns-ish, do you have less chance of getting to the top of 2 of those 4 tracks? Because a lot of what you're doing as Tapestry is trying to extend your game under your faction's special power. Because if you extend your game, that means you get more turns in that critical last era, and you just could do more stuff and generally score more points if you do that. And I was surprised to find that the Arts and Architecture expansion didn't make the game last that much longer, didn't nerf that, because it gives you ability as you move up that track to move up the other tracks. I believe that was a fan design expansion. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. And that Jamey Stegmaier played it. It was like a print play, and he liked it so much that he actually produced it to go along with Tapestry. I really liked it. It adds something that the other expansions have not added here, which is the ability to take these little Arts and Architecture cards and add them to your board. And when you take an income turn, again, you have to do this between eras to get more resources. It boosts what you're getting. So you get those things again every time. So going up that track can be pretty lucrative when it comes to those income turns and making those more beneficial to you. I also like the fact that given all the expansions Tapestry has now, there are, I don't know how many, but that's a lot of factions. So you can play a lot of games as I have, and never have played the same faction twice. Every once in a while I will, but there's always something new to experience there and a new path to take and different interactions between the factions that are in the game. So when you're playing something, it's like certain factions just have certain advantages you got to factor in to what you're doing. I really like this game. If there's a downside, it's that, again, some of those interactions between the factions they may not be the best balanced, but you sort of take that as it comes. There's also a fair amount of luck that's involved when it comes to when you're exploring. If you get buildings on the board, that can really boost your production, again, extend those turns, and that can be a big boost. So you're rolling some dice in certain places. Just there's some randomness there, but the experience of the game, I think, me personally, makes up for it. The other thing is, if you do extend your game, if others have not extended their game as efficiently, you could be taking 5 or 6 turns all by yourself at the end of the game, because players don't move from era to era at the same rate. So you could be just moving into the last era when everybody else is just about finished their game, and of course they sit there and watch you take your final few turns, and that yucks the yum a little bit when that happens. But otherwise, some small criticisms for what I feel is a great game.
Yeah, Tapestry has a huge following. And I realized when you started talking about it, we did a show just a few episodes ago where we rated all the T-Series games from Boards of Dice. We really should have given Tapestry like an honorary input there. Not only does it start with the letter T, but it also equals up to the number of tracks in a game than any of those other ones.
That's true.
It's definitely not for me, but it is on Board Game Arena. So if people wanted to give it a try, it's on there for you to give it a whirl. Like I said, it has a huge following. People do like this game.
Yep. It's a good one I'll keep going back to. But yeah, I think it is also, people either love it or hate it. And I guess I can see both sides of that, right? It does have tracks on top of tracks. There's no question about that. So that is Tapestry with the Arts and Architecture expansion.
I got another review copy. This is from Wolff Designa, designed by William Borg Barthet and Artyom Nichipurov. It is called Gods and Mortals, and this is going to be coming out later on. I'll talk about it a bit in the news. And Gods and Mortals is one of those games where you need to tell the people right off the bat that these troops are not yours. We had this syndrome talking about conventions earlier. Back at a Gen Con we went to, and our core game group never played a game like this. And we went into the library, and we took out Imperial 2030. Imperial 2030 looks just like it's going to be an Axis Allies or Risk game, right? We have troops, and you get a faction to start with, and those are your troops. But then suddenly someone buys an invested interest in your faction, and you no longer have those troops. They're not yours. And our minds were blown. We just couldn't get over it. We had to like, give me that rule book. This can't be right. This is not how these games are played. But yeah, so it's very much like that. You're investing faith in these different factions, and so you don't actually own them. You're moving up on the faith track. You can only be on 2 of these faith tracks, so you can only semi-support 2 of these factions, and you want to support them because you want to cash in at the beginning of a round. And the cash in will be number of areas that they are present times how far you've moved up their faction track. And so it's this very interesting game where you're placing cards to do actions, and the card is either going to have a faction color on it or one of the areas. And so you're either going to choose a faction somewhere on the map because of the color, or a faction that's in that particular land and do that action, be it recruit or move and everyone has a separate god sheet where they have 3 actions that are just for them, and they all usually cost what they call sacrifice tokens, which you have to take another action to get, and those actions are crazy powerful. And so you're moving around trying to get the factions that you're invested in more areas. People are killing them and moving them away because you get to play whatever card you want. It's like, oh, there's blue and yellow over there. I don't have any skin in that game, but if they attack each other, that means they both die, and now they're both, they both lose that point of power. So sure, there's a fight over there now because I play that card, and those people now will lose out on points. So it's very much a timing thing as well. It's like, when am I going to sell off? Because that's your money as well when you go to buy in. And that's a problem too, because the cost to buy in is whatever power they're at the moment. So you might want to weaken a faction down to like only 2 territories, and then, start buying into them next turn, because now it's only like $2 a share to get in on those guys. Anyway, I had a ball playing the first game. I can't wait to see it come out and have people play this. It is called Gods and Mortals. by Wolff Designa.
I really like that they're revisiting this Imperial sort of mechanism where you don't have your faction, but you're investing in factions somehow. That was something that when I played Imperial, as you said, it blew my mind years ago when it came out in 2009, and definitely something revisiting. Because as you said, it takes you a minute to adjust to that, right? And when I say a minute, I mean a lot longer than a minute. It just seems so odd. The first game I played, Imperial at least, I thought I was losing badly and ended up winning the game, which is a certain draw to that, right? That it's hard to gauge where things are and your strategy is shifting. So I'm glad to hear they're doing something like that with Gods and Mortals. You're being bad on my pocketbook here.
I know.
Walker.
That's why I was worried when you were talking about Xenology, that I was like, oh, this is available. Please stop.
So Gods and Mortals is one I'm following, and now it'll be one I back.
Yeah. It looks great. The production, at least in what I got in front of me, the production looked great. It's like these nice chunky meeples, and you have the mortals or temples. There can only be one temple, regardless of what faction in each territory. And it's the way they do it is so interesting. It's like, in order to do this, you have to exhaust X mortals or the temple, right? And every action is sort of like that. So if you want to do something, you look over there, it's like, oh, there's units there, but they've already been exhausted. So it's almost like you need to exhaust them to protect them, right? Because people can't do actions on them if they're already exhausted. It's very, very interesting.
Sounds like a winner.
That's Gods and Mortals, and those are the games we played this week. Now a quick break to pay some bills. And we're back with the news and why it doesn't matter. I'm here with Don. He is from the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast. They are a fantastic organization. They do all sorts of different shows, between role-playing shows and gaming express. They have express episodes and larger episodes and all the same stuff we sort of do, like, end of the year lists. And I listened to them for quite a few years, and I like everything about it. What do you say, Don? Did I cover it all?
You covered it all, yeah. And it's so funny. It is a podcast. I've been on it for the last 7 years or so, but it's been going for over 13 years. And I know Jamey Kagi, who it's his brainchild, right? And he runs all those shows. That's his full-time job. And yeah, he's very proud of it, and rightly so. I'm happy to be a part of it, and hopefully the listeners enjoy it as well. Yeah,
it's very much a group of people that get together to play games a lot, just sort of are now getting together to talk about them. It's very friendly. It's great. Anyway.
Yeah. We enjoy it.
In other news, I just talked about Gods and Mortals. It is going to be released at the end of March, so look for it then.
So one thing that popped up on our news feed, you hear it on our podcast as well, is there's a new game coming called Dark Pact by Trick or Treat Studios. And this is a game by Tom Lehman. And anything that comes out of Tom Lehman's mind, I'm automatically interested in. My favorite game of all time is Res Arcana. That's designed by his. Race for the Galaxy, another designed by his. A 2-player ladder climbing game, Chuhan, designed by him, that I've really been into lately. So basically, if it's card game and Tom Lehman, I am immediately interested. And Dark Pact looks like this is a game that is coming out very soon. It's coming to retail March 18th, 2026 is what I see. So we don't have long to wait. This was announced back at Gen Con 2023. And I just love the description here. And I'm reading directly from ICV2. So players assume the roles of occult researchers looking to strike deals with patrons from dark planes, conduct seances, exorcise demons, and acquire cursed items as they build a deck of cards that help them achieve one of 13 victory conditions. So one of the things his games are known for is that kind of dynamic aspect and the changing strategies you can employ. And when you talk about these things, conducting seances, acquiring cursed items, and a deck building aspect with multiple in-game conditions, it just seems like there might be a lot to like here. So this is what I'm really looking forward to. Dark Pact, coming out in mid-March from Trick or Treat Studios.
It's nice and dark looking for sure. My next bit of sort of crowdfunding news, there's a group of comedians, I guess, or sort of a group of guys. They're called Viva La Dirt League, and they do all sorts of videos on like WoW or first-person shooters or silly videos that just come up on my feed, and I think they're usually pretty hilarious. They also have a whole segment of they're all employees at like a GameStop, and hilarity ensues. And so they have they've done all sorts of Kickstarters for their YouTube channel, but now they have one for an actual game. It's going to be called PC Rivals, and they're going to have characters in this game, from all their videos and stuff. So it looks pretty hilarious. It's going to be a normal deck builder, and I think it'll be good for if you're looking for this sort of gateway game where you have people you want to introduce modern board games to, but because they've seen these videos, it'll be like sort of a tie-in. Hey, here's a game with those guys from New Zealand. And hopefully there's a little bit more there. I've yet to look, too far into it to see if there is a lot, but it seems like, it's a standard sort of deck builder. And I'd like to see if there's a little bit of a hook in there, but we'll see once I get the rules read. And so the name of this crowdfunding project is Viva la Dirt League presents NPC Rivals.
And it looks like if you're going to back it, you should go in at least the rare level because it comes with
you
a
need
golden skull.
You need the giant skull of Antioch or something. That's another thing that's like right from one of their videos, right? It's a dice tower and the dice, I think, pop out of the mouth and it holds the cards in it.
That's awesome.
It's like, looks crazy.
Very cool.
And that is the news and why it doesn't matter. And on to our main review, which will be Sweetlands. So Sweetlands is designed by Tosuka Cho, and he's designed games like Ostia, Aqua Garden, and Atlas Lost, Rise of the New Sovereigns. And so what you're doing in Sweetlands is everyone's seen Wreck-It Ralph, and it happens in the game Sugar Rush. It's a land of candy. The king has died. Princess Penelope is too selfish and self-centered to take care of her land. She's away online playing her racing game. So now we've decided it's our chance to bring in our rabbit cookie thugs to extort money from the inhabitants of Sugar Rush. So we group off different sections of buildings, we send in the cookie rabbits, and they get us points. That is what you do in Sweetlands. It's pretty close, right, Don?
That's pretty close. I
think that's in the front page of the book. I'm sure that's what it says.
It's so funny. When I think about this game, Sweetlands, I look at the cover and I think some poor soul has bought this thinking it's a very easy variant of an innocent, sweet little simple game, and it is very much not, right? This is on the heavier side of Euro games, more complex. I don't think it's quite the Fatale Lacerda level, but it is edging toward that end of the spectrum.
Well, I think it's pretty close. But what I like about it is that everything sort of makes sense. Everything has a little bit of a flow to it of why you're doing it and everything else. So what we usually do is we go through like sort of a game scenario and we just cover it as we go here. So I have some notes here about setup. There are 57 different tokens that you have to set up on just the main board alone. And this has nothing to do with any of the resources or anything on the outside of the board. This is just piles of stuff that you must prepare on the main board itself. Speaking about your own personal board, there are 50 tokens that you must set up on that, be it buildings or tokens or things to track your resources. And each player has a double-sided map, which I thought was interesting because I was wondering why there was 5 in the board. I was like, I had to double check how many players it could be, but they just threw an extra map in there just because one side is standard that everyone plays with on your first few games, and then you flip it over and then every one of those 5 maps is different. So that'll mix things up. And then you have sort of a player board that you get to slide the character that you're playing in. So everyone has like unique character powers. So setup is a thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, setup is a thing for this game. And you said, there's a lot of different pieces that you have on your table. You also need to invest in a larger table to play this game because it has quite the geographical footprint. I can think of a lot of gamers might have tables that might not accommodate all these different, because you have a couple boards yourself. Any one of those is almost the size of a smaller board game board. And then you have the central board where things are happening. So yeah, even on the larger tables, it can be quite crowded. So a lot of setup, a lot of different pieces, a lot of things going on in the game.
And then there's trying to shuffle the deck of cards, which is about 6 decks of regular cards. Because that's going to be a main concept, which I'll get into later. So that's about the setup. Let's just talk about what a bear this is to teach. And I think I got the teach down pretty good. There are 2 main concepts that I try to tell people is there's building buildings, all the different steps you need to do to get a building on the board. And then there are the cards. And I think those are the 2 main concepts of the game. And if you sort of explain how those work, everything sort of falls into place. So to get a building on the board, first you have to put a tile, a train tile, and then you have to build a road next to that train tile, which flips that train tile. And then that's what's going to allow you to now you may build a building on it. So you explain to them all these different steps and why you want to do those steps, because you need to get these little groups of 3 or more buildings, and at least 3 of them have to be different, and they can't touch other cities. So you have to make sure there's gaps in between, because you want these core little cities, because at the end of every turn, you're going to get city points. And so that's another little bear part about the game, is because there's 3 different scoring tokens, and that kind of throws people like, okay, well, what how does this translate into points and how does that translate into points? So, and then, like I said, then there's the cards, and you're going to use the cards for several different things. You're going to play them, you're going to discard them, you're going to put them into like resource generating areas. You can, what they call, automate them, which slides them underneath your player board. But if you can get those two sort of core things down, I think you'll have a better time of it.
And I do like the central mechanism by which you're actually doing these things. And it's a worker placement game, sort of. You have these golden tokens that you're putting on different actions. And those actions themselves cost cards. And they go up in cost as different people take that given action. So 1 card for the first person to go there, 2 cards, 3 cards. So we found in our games that cards are sort of the limiting factor. So you need to make sure that which is good, it's good that you have that limiting factor, that sort of that delicious tension that's there. But also, you need to be careful to make sure you have enough cards back to do what you need to do, and you have to pay attention to what other players are doing as well.
You definitely need to go through your cards and decide which ones are overly useful for the time of game that you're in. That's another thing that I really like about Sweetlands is that there is sort of a transitional period. Because, like I said, when you're flipping the terrain tiles by building the roads next to them, you'll get like an ability, something will trigger. And it's usually getting resources for that particular terrain type, like woods will get you wood resource. It is a game that's very much like terraforming Mars. You have an income sort of track. And then at the beginning of every turn, you look at that track and you're going to get that many resources. And you track it the same way as you did in terraforming Mars. You put these cubes in the different resource areas, and that's how many you have of each area. So the second ability on that terrain tile is to go up these tracks, which give you end game scoring. And the sort of transition in the game is like, okay, I'm making enough resources now. Next time when I flip these terrain tiles, I need to start going up these tracks.
And that pivot point for any given character is different too. And that again adds some complexity to this game, because each of the characters you're playing is asymmetric, and I don't remember how many there are, but they're double-sided. So there's a variety of characters in the game, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that will affect how efficient you are at moving up these tracks, and therefore when you need to sort of make that pivot as you're talking about. I do like these games where you want to do things and it's fun, just the doing of things, but you also need to decide when to jump over and start really focusing on those in-game points. You had talked about the cards, Walker, and I think that's one of the big positives of the game. It's also one of the issues I have with the game, because I'll get a handful of cards and I'll look at it and be like, man, I want to play all these cards. They will all be useful to me in different ways. But I very quickly gotten to the point with this game where it's like, if it costs a certain amount, I ignore what's on that card, because I don't want to be tempted, because money can be a real limiting factor, and you're just not going to have money to get these things out. So you really need to decide any given hand that, what cards you're going to try to get played to your board and what cards you're just going to use as the fodder for sort of fueling your turns. And again, that's where an element of randomness comes in, because you could get a hand of 5 cards that 2 or 3 of which work together. You will never get the chance to play those 2 or 3 cards together, because again, the resources you get in a round are the resources you must spend in the round. If you have cards and they cost more than you're going to get, you simply cannot play both those cards, because you've got to sort of get down to 1 card at the end of every round. So you just can't sort of hold them back and play them later.
Yeah, because you have to discard all your cards but one at the end of the round. And so it's just one of these things we thought was silly. Did you keep any player tokens? Because there's this action space you get to go to that gives you a player token, and you just get to put that out regardless of how many people are there. So you've played 1 card for it, but now you get to place it anywhere later on in the round, but you don't get to keep it for next turn. So if you've kept that, you've done badly. If you have more than 1 card, you've done badly, because like I said, knowing how all the cards work, because you can just discard a card for 2 resources. And that is one of the main ways you're paying for these roads and buildings and everything else that you're putting out there, because you're not making enough to do it. So it's like, okay, now I discard 4 cards for 8 stone so I can build these buildings. And that's how it goes. And I do the exact same thing that you said. I will get my hand of cards. I was like, oh, you cost 20? No, you go to the back. Anything that costs more than 10, you go to the back. You're going to be paying for, my worker placement actions. Okay, how about these other ones? Which one of these are going to get me resources or put up my resource tracks? Okay, these are the ones that might get played.
It also makes me sort of, relatively speaking, ignore the tags at the bottom of the cards, because there's some actions and some benefits that will get you a lot according to the number of tags of certain types you have on the bottom of those cards. Like number of cakes or cookies that are shown across your sort of tableau. And I just can't get to a point where I can really make that work enough to give me return on investment for looking for certain types of cards in the game. Because again, this game forces you into certain things, right? Certain resources like wheat, you've got to have wheat. It's central to a lot of actions. So you've got to be sort of in that wheat game. You've also got to be in the money game because money's how you pay for those cards. So as you're doing that, it's very hard to say, okay, and now I'm going to focus also on getting the kinds of cards that have this tag down here to make this thing happen. So I found that's more of you either get lucky or relatively unlucky when it comes to some of those tags. Not knocking the game for that, just saying that is something you got to think about.
There's about 8 tags, and I tend to just focus always on 2. There's a brownie tag that usually reduces the cost of other brownie cards, and then there's a cake tag that seems to be very common, so it triggers a lot. So I usually just focus on those 2. And like you said, cards are the core sort of cost thing, so there's different ways you can get more cards. These 2, well, depending on the number of players you're playing with, there's these 2 vital spots, which is, it lets you draw 2 cards. So you play a card to place your worker there, then you get to draw 2. That gets you 1 up. And then there's these harbors, 2 harbors that are on your player board that if you build out to, you immediately get to draw a card. And then in the income phase, you're going to up your 5 cards that you draw, to 6 and then to 7. And that's going to get you those more cards that you really need to get you those points. Because, that's the funny thing. And the rule book, once again, mocks you. It's one of these rule books here at the end. It's like, try starting out aiming for 270 points with each character. And once you're comfortable with that, go for that 320 mark. I don't know how many points that you and your friends got.
It's not that.
It was not 200. Like the final game that I got, I was just on the cusp of getting the 300, but the first 2 games was not even close to 270. It was a very, very mocking rule book. I didn't appreciate it. Not at all.
Yeah, it does call for efficiency, and it's sort of odd that it's calling for efficiency, but also keeping you on rails in certain ways. You had talked about these 2 spaces on your personal board that you can build out to with your terrain tiles and roads, and by doing so, you can get those extra card draws. So you really want to do that because it gives you increasing resources over the game. Further, there are 4 ports that you need to build out to. I shouldn't say need, that it heavily pushes you to build out to in the game so that you don't actually lose points at the end. So you can lose up to 40 points, if I recall, just if you don't build out to those ports. So it does force you to kind of do that. So as you're doing those things, you're on rails a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And it's enough to sort of take away some agency from you. Now, I don't want to mislead anyone. It's not like you're driven down this path and you must do these things, but there are things you definitely want to get done by the end of the game, building out toward those ports, and early in the game, building out toward the terrain that gives you that those card draws. And so I did think it was kind of weird that they sort of force you to do that in a game that's otherwise very open in what you do in terms of actions and strategic paths.
Yeah. And it's kind of aggravating as well because you get all these terrain tiles out and they're worth a lot, but then you have to get roads out beside them. So
Right.
It's this constant struggle of trying to get out terrain tiles, trying to get roads out because you need to flip these tiles over so you can build buildings. So getting tiles, getting roads, then finally getting the buildings out and getting them spaced out. So you get, luckily when you build buildings, they all give you benefits underneath them or under them when you build them. And at the end of the game, if you get to the top of these tracks, there's a little bit of extra scoring. Did that ever happen in any of your games, Don?
For the scoring tracks, the 6 markers that you have on the central board?
No. If you build all of the buildings of a certain type, you get some bonus scoring. I know it sounds very silly because it'll never happen, but, it's there.
I agree with you. Yeah, the games I've played you may be able to get to the top of one track, but I don't think you can really focus on that and really get that, good ROI for those tracks, unless you have a character that can be used in a way that I haven't discovered yet. For us, it's like you can do, the industry track is another one where you have a carriage and a locomotive, and it says, once your carriage gets so far out, you get your locomotive, and then you can move them both far. I just don't see how you get to the end of that track without just focusing completely on that. And you would lose so many points in other areas.
Yeah, that was very, very same thing with the rule book and saying I had to get so many points. It was very frustrating. It's like, hey, and if you get your carriage to this part, then you can start moving your locomotive. Really? Well, maybe give me chances to actually go up that track. That would be fantastic. The game only lasts 6 turns, and we haven't even got through. We're like 25% through of all the things you can do. Never mind going up this industry track to get you points. On this industry track, you move up your carriage. It's orange, so you get all the benefits of the orange spaces you move through. Also, there are scorings scoring spaces there. I shouldn't say scoring spaces. It indicates that you'll score when you hit them. But there are bridges there. At the end of when you pass, depending on how many bridges you've passed, you're going to go up the industry track. And that will be points at the end of the game. We also have not talked about, there are skill tiles, and there are several different things that they do. There are some end of round scoring ones, some flippability ones. It's another thing you can do on your turn. It's another whole part of the game. They're another thing that's hard to get because they also tie into wonders. And if you get 1 star, you get to build your special building. 2 stars get you another skill. So it's very hard to get these skills, but they're very useful.
Yeah, I actually love the addition of the skill tiles in the game because it allows you to get even more resource generation, because the ones people seem to make a beeline for are the ones that give you additional things when you flip them over. The downside of that is your round is therefore extended. And when your round is extended, you get a later choice of benefits, in-round benefits, or I guess I should say beginning of the next round benefits that you may obtain. And so I like that they're there. I like that there's this great tension between a race for those things. Again, it's another thing that is, any other game would be the primary thing you're racing for, right? We talked about the aforementioned card draw spaces, the harbors, these tiles, income, tags. I mean, all these things are things you're racing for. So I think the game does benefit people that really can efficiently focus on something like that. And as you said, there's just so much stuff going on. At least when I've taught this game, as I'm teaching it, I'm thinking there's just no way this game is not a hot mess because of just all the different things that you're doing. But at the end of the day, it all ties very strongly together. So I think that's the great tenet of a good designer. And Tetsuko Chow, as you said, has designed a lot of other games. Again, not a lot that have kind of come over to the Americas, but now they're starting to break through. And I think for good reason, because they have this synergy between all these actions and paths and tracks and stuff like that, that does sort of call back to a Vital Lacerda type design.
Yeah, we've talked about the buildings, but we haven't really talked about the buildings. The buildings are adorable. And when I said cookie rabbits, there are actual cookie rabbits, because that's another part of the game. I don't think we'll get into, because it's not too much there. It's just a food track. You go up the food track, they unlock the cookie rabbits. All right, so the cookie rabbits can go into the buildings, and only 1 cookie rabbit per building, and it'll get you some points. And the buildings themselves are gorgeous. There's brownies and cream puff buildings, and there's these milk containers on the industry track that you have to build so it doesn't stop your carriage from moving. And it just makes the game look amazing. Adorable even.
Yeah, that's one of the big draws of this game. Again, there's a little bit of a break between how cute this game is and how brutally complex it plays. So it's different, it just seems like an odd theming, but it's a theming that works, I think. And as you said, it's kind of nice to look down and realize that you're putting milk cartons from your youth onto the board and they are buildings, or these cookie rabbits, as you said, or like the brownie buildings. It's just so gorgeous. And it definitely has a different, very unique art style associated with everything. The iconography, the fonts, all these things are just a little odd. But again, all I found, at least from a graphic design point of view, all very usable, very functional, which sort of surprised me, right? Once I got into the game the first time we played, like halfway through, it's like, okay, everything is now clicking in this game. They're the reminders where you need them to be, but you might not realize it, when you first start playing. But later it's like, okay, what was this? And you realize it's right where you should be looking. And I think, again, there's a lot of effort that went into that.
Yeah, I was looking at it, there's 120 different symbols that are printed on the back of the rule book. Now, granted, a lot of them are similar. It'll be like, here's this action, and the tile color underneath will be different. So like, oh, you can only do this on wheat, or you can only do this in mines, but still a lot of symbology. And also some other unique things that might tie up players, because beside all these buildings on your player board, there'll be a cost. It'll say, this is how much the buildings in this row cost. And the typical action that you go to build these buildings will say question mark on the cost, which means it's the cost that's on your player board of the ones you're building. But there'll be other cards that'll just give the symbol of building a building. And so if you get that symbol, it just means you take the building and put it on your board, and you're paying whatever cost is on the card that you played. So it just could be money, or it could be you had X symbols, so you get a free building. So trying to get that disconnect between this is the normal cost over here, but you might find the symbol on a card somewhere that will just arbitrarily give you a free building, and you don't have to pay for it. It's, buildings don't cost anything unless it specifically says they do. Anyway, lots to remember. Speaking of buildings, there's a clock tower. Everyone has this, ice cream cone clock tower thing, and everyone's clock tower unlocks in a different way. And so explaining like another bear to teaching the game for sure.
Yeah, that again, variability that you get between the characters is a big plus. The variability required for building that particular building out on the board is a little bit of a minus because they have to understand that. And I've played whole games with people new to this game, at least seasoned gamers, but new to this game, and they'll sort of ignore that because they're like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do otherwise. This is one small thing and I don't need to worry about that. But sometimes that can be a critical portion of that character's strategy. And I think that's a great thing because it gives you room to come back and learn more and kind of find how to play these characters. Because again, they are different enough that you kind of should approach them in their own way. So maybe if you get really good at that, you start easing up toward those point scoring that the rule book condescendingly says that you should be getting to for a given game. So I do have a question for you, Walker. So in any given round, you have 6 cards, I believe, in hand, and you're going to spend 5 of those cards. You may get more because of card draws, but the rule book specifies you have to keep 1 card from round to round. And I don't for the life of me know why they require you to keep that 1 card. The only time you can spend that last card is in the last round. Was there anything you guys found that there was a reason to keep that card?
Not particularly. I think it was just the fact that you had to discard down.
It's a little weird.
To spend it out, just to limit the planning, right? Because if you start holding a bunch of particular cards, like I said, with the symbols, like we talked about, that you need the triggers, and you start hoarding those, then maybe, could throw off how the game is played. Yeah, but I couldn't find anything that was necessary to not be able to spend all your cards.
But another little weird aspect in the game that's full of some of those weird aspects and just seems a little askew from our regular games that we've seen, these deep Euro games that have crossed on the table for us at least. And so, I think we've done a fairly decent job of at least relating to the listeners just how many things are going on in this game and how complex and how all these systems are interacting with each other in really interesting ways. But, there are some things, as you say, that can be burdens when it comes to the setup time. The teach can be a huge bear. The table space you need, some of the iconography is a little off, but otherwise like a really deep, meaty Euro packaged in a gorgeous, tasty candy shell.
Yeah, there's so much more. We didn't talk about automation. We didn't talk about milestone tokens. We didn't talk about endgame scoring. There's this whole other, 6 tracks that you need to go up to. It is sort of, you're going to get X points for how many train tiles you put out. So it's 1 point for 3 and then 1 point for 2. And it goes down and down. The further up these tracks you go, more points for rabbit cookies. And so on top of all these other things that you need to do, you need to get up these tracks. But you only have 6 turns. So a ton there. I think it is a fabulous game. If you're looking for a game you're going to play multiple times within your group, it fills that category totally because, like we said, different player powers each time, totally different ways you can play. There's no way you're going to do everything you want. There's no way you're going to get to the top of these 6 scoring tracks every game. Lots to change, lots to play. And that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Thank you ever so much for everyone watching, and thank you, Don, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a ton of fun.
No problem at all. Peace!
You've been listening to So Very Wrong About Games, a board gaming podcast about board games produced by Michael Walker. You can find all our information at SoWrongGames.com. Special thanks to What Does It Eat for allowing us to use their most excellent song, FOS, as our intro. You can find them at WhatDoesItEat.com. We hope to see you again soon, and as always, try to be right, but remember, you're so very wrong.